just because you've had some success in the past doesn't mean you're not still doing the wrong things.
It's just harder to market yourself when you're trying to market to everyone, so you just leave it and then you're in famine.
I think the faulty belief here that most people have is, if I narrow down, I will lose out on opportunities.
I did loads of work for pretty much anyone. That was a thing that was just causing the pain that I was feeling.
Maybe you can start to heal some of the burnout that you've experienced. Today we're diving into what we call the freedom paradox, which is the belief that keeping your options open is what keeps you free, when in reality it's probably what's keeping you stuck and actually limiting your options.
Hi there, I'm Ped, and this guy who's just been speaking to you is Riley, and together we've spent over $100,000 and 30 years building our coaching and consulting businesses.
And in this episode, we're going to unpack why niching down isn't actually a limitation at all. It's actually the fastest route to creative and financial freedom. And by the end of this episode, you're also going to see how choosing a lane doesn't actually box you in. It's what sets you free. So welcome to Change Champions.
Should we get going then, Riley? Yeah, should we talk about what this freedom paradox is all about?
Yeah. So I think the gut punch that most entrepreneurs or solopreneurs specifically can relate to is, do you remember that time when you first started and you thought that going solo meant like more freedom, and then all of a sudden it felt like it was more of a hustle, like you were working more and making less than ringing any bells?
Oh god, definitely. I remember doing a little bit of a calculation around how long I'd spent on a particular project. And then I added all of the time that I'd spent trying to get that project and worked out my day rate. And I was like, geez, I'm earning below minimum wage.
Yeah, cardinal sin. You can't work out your day rate when you're first starting.
I know.
That'll always mess with your head for sure.
Yeah. So, well, look, I mean, I know that for me, it was the part of that gut punch was having inconsistent demand after I'd burnt through my obvious wins of clients who are colleagues that I knew or people within my network, just people that knew me that kind of kept me busy for a while. And then after that, every month just felt like I was starting from scratch because I'd win a project, I'd just go all in on it, wouldn't have any time to do any marketing because I actually felt that marketing was something that other people would do. I know that that's not something that everyone thinks, but I didn't think I should be marketing. I just wanted to do my work. But then realizing that after that project finished, just didn't have another gig lined up, and I had to start calling around, sending emails, having those kind of networking chats, virtual coffees, real coffees, all those things. But it was definitely a wake-up call for me to realize that it wasn't going to be an easy breezy lemon squeezy kind of thing.
Yeah, it's strange because you hear about niching and it's like, you explore how like picking a lane feels risky when you're self-employed, but it's there's like an emotional component. It's almost like we don't want to be boxed in, like we don't want to be labeled, and it feels like you're being like starved of oxygen if you have to cut off your arm and say, oh, I no longer do this thing, I only focus on this this arm of the business. Is that kind of like just, yeah, I see you nodding along.
Yeah,
I know you relate.
well, that's exactly. I mean, we met about what 6, 7 years. I don't know, however long it was when I
Yeah.
was going through the motions of this, and this idea about picking a lane really brings up sense of FOMO because
Yeah.
in a way that also relates to that feeling of having to start from scratch every month and finding it really hard because if you're this is me looking back in hindsight, when I was trying to appeal to absolutely everyone, it was just really hard going. And for me, when we talk about the paradox, that's really the nub of it because I tried to appeal to everyone. I did loads of work for pretty much anyone, but really that was a thing that was just causing the pain that I was feeling.
Yeah, it's in my experience, like not only like obviously we both can relate to it, but in the all the clients that we've worked with, what the pattern that I'm starting to see here is that the people who resist niching down the most are often the ones that actually need to do it the most. it's it's almost like it's almost like swinging a dull axe, and it's like if you know, it's the resistance is so narrowing your niche is like sharpening your focus, right? So think of it as like sharpening your axe, and the ones who have been like swinging the axe the hardest or the longest, and the tree is just like not coming down, like trying to chop that tree, or trying to pierce through the market. They're the ones with like the dullest blades. It's like
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
you would really benefit from sharpening that axe before swinging it again. And so it's interesting that the ones who have the most resistance seem to be the ones like that also have the dullest blades. And by the way, if any of this so far is resonating, if you can relate to this, then definitely check out our newsletter. If you aren't on there already, it's where we share more stories, free resources, and the occasional giveaways. Definitely check that out, leverageaccelerator.co. But when it comes to swinging the axe, right, it's not like there's a lack of effort. Like you are,
Yeah, yeah.
if anything, like you're exerting more effort
More
by
effort.
swinging the dull axe instead of a sharp one. And so really what that comes down to is it's a lack of focus. And there's
Mhm.
this like emotional component as well that we're hitting on, but and actually like there's the beliefs attached to it. So maybe we can let's get into that. We can talk
Let's talk
about
about that.
the the faulty belief is what we like to call. And I think the faulty belief here that most people have is if I narrow down or sharpen my axe or sharpen my focus, I will lose out on opportunities. It's like that FOMO you were talking about.
It was this idea that because I know I can serve lots of different people and do lots of different types of projects, there are therefore more opportunities for me because I'm versatile. But really, if no one sees you in your message, if you're marketing or if you're explaining what you do, then it's really hard for them to connect to what you do, who you do it for, and why what you do matters for them.
Yeah, I think the whole freedom thing. So there's this talking point you and I have about like how that gets twisted into like the fear of being specific. And I think the idea there that people need to come around to is that being specific is not the uh, antithesis. That's probably too big of a word. It is not the opposites. It is not like specificity and freedom actually kind of go much more together than they are, opposites. Or and so it's it's the idea that, and this starts to, I'm starting to maybe jump ahead a little bit here, but we think about like psychology and heuristics, and I think a lot of times we we fail to see it from someone else's perspective. And so if you're trying, for example, like if you're trying to refer a friend, um, to, I don't know, like let's say you refer a friend to like a masseuse. They're looking for a massage. Well, if the masseuse didn't market themselves as a masseuse, but like a total wellness spa, I mean, maybe you would refer the friend there, but like it's so much harder because it's like, well, I don't, but do they even have massage there? Is that even a service that they offer? Like, and so by putting yourself in a box, giving yourself a label, I think um, it's, we repel that. You know what I mean? Like it's just something like we just don't want to do it. We don't want to label ourselves or put ourselves in that
Don't
box.
define me. I am more than this. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I think it gets
it,
to
it
identity.
it's but it's the exact thing that then causes that kind of feast and famine cycle. That if you haven't come across this expression, you feast on a project and you have all the 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 benefits of being busy and earning money, but then not having the bandwidth to then go out and find the next gig because it's just harder to market yourself when you're trying to market to everyone. So you just leave it, and then that project finishes, and then you're in famine, and that's that kind of adrenaline piece around that faulty belief. And instead, really clarity of who you're targeting just makes a lot of those things a lot easier. So that the masseuse can get more massages in because they know exactly let's play along with that. It's a specific sports massage for a particular type of injury, right? And okay, how much clearer is it going to be to refer that masseuse to people if they have that injury. And they might not massage every single person, but everyone that has that injury in that local area, they'll know exactly where to go.
Yeah, and so instead of going in that direction, which we'll touch on in a second for listeners here, give them some like solid takeaways. But um, actually, Ped, maybe I can ask you because I feel like you have more experience with this. What are the common alternatives? Do you think that maybe if people recognize or see themselves doing this, they might realize that they're actually on this hamster wheel and they're not actually going in the right direction towards freedom here?
Well, so I'd say this is a good question. Uh, it is having a website where you click on it and you have a bunch of pages that say if you are a business or if you are an individual or if you did, and then you go into those sub pages, and within there you've got about 3 or 4 different services that you've either named or and they all sound ambiguous, like group coaching or leadership workshop or your communication skills training. All those different things is an indication, like my website used to be like, of not picking a lane. I mean, there's loads of other things, but that's something that I can definitely relate to.
Yeah, I mean,
How
well,
about you? What
okay.
have you seen?
I've seen that so many times, and just so many different like variations of that. But I just wanna I wanna flag here like whether it's a website or a logo or a and there's probably lots of other examples that we could sit here and brainstorm. But I think that the reality is like if you or someone you know is still getting business, um, with a website that speaks to 8 different avatars, or you sell like 4 different services, it is not because of your website that you are getting business. I can virtually guarantee you that it is in spite of your website, or it is because people are not actually going to your website. It's it's something you can actually measure as well, and getting like a few hundred hits per month is also kind of negligible in the grand scheme of things when it comes to traffic and actually converting that traffic into paying customers. Not to mention, and this starts to go into the deep end here, but like that is a totally different business model than most of the service-based entrepreneurs that we talk to, meet with, work with, as opposed to e-commerce and driving traffic to a website and Google Ads and buying a low-cost product on a website and shipping it out. Like it's just totally different things. So I think what I just want to emphasize here is just because you've had some success in the past doesn't mean you're not still doing the wrong things. What's actually worked really well for most of the people that we've worked with and that we've met is much more of that relationship focused, whether it's in person or online, but relationship driven business development and making sure you're building real connections with real people, and like that is going to drive a much higher ROI, and also it actually starts to spur and like build the momentum for word of mouth. So
Mhm.
when we get into how you can actually make word of mouth grow instead of just relying on it until it dwindles, is much more about this reframe of thinking that it's not seeing yourself as confined into this box, but it's actually more of like a lens in which people can come into your world and actually see you for who you are and the value you have to offer. If that does that make sense? Putting it that way,
It does
Ped?
make sense. And it's making me think about a particular client that we had, right, who was a generalist and still does quite a lot of generalist training, but had decided to training workshops, things like that. Uh, but decided that she wanted to be known for a particular thing, as a niche offering. And she went through a process of filtering and narrowing down in terms of who she's worked with in the past, who she enjoyed working with the most, where she felt like she could have the biggest impact. And and even though the first iteration of who she was targeting was pretty broad, women who work in male dominated environments, in pursuing these conversations around uh, to have, we talk about having market research conversations. Just for those of you that don't know, this is our relationship first business development approach, where you actually speak to the market to figure out what they want, but that's for other episodes and um, other conversations for us to have. But in speaking to women who work in male-dominated environments, she realized that she could have more of an impact with women who work in tech, not finance, because of various reasons. And then pursuing that further, there was a little bit more narrowing that went into that. But at that point, it became so obvious how that referral flywheel could just keep going because she spoke to one person, telling them what she was focusing on, and they'd say, "I know exactly who you need to speak to," and that was marketing. You know, it's not referrals from the 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 magical fairy dust referrals where you're just hoping it'll happen. It's the intentional business development activity that leads to referrals because you're super clear with who you serve and people know that you're the masseuse that they need to refer their friend to.
Yeah, and so connecting that to the whole the freedom paradox, right, is it's this weird, like, so many clients we've worked with, they feel that FOMO, that resistance to narrowing down, but as soon as you narrow down your focus, this weird thing happens where it flips, it inverts. It's like Alice in Wonderland, where you go in this tiny little hole and then all of a sudden this whole world opens up, and it's just like that's why we call it a paradox, right? It doesn't really make sense until you experience it yourself, and you start getting people referring you or word of mouth, or and to be fair, to be honest, like, just like that, it's very possible that you are a generalist, a jack of all trades, you're very good at what you do and you've had lots of referrals in the past. Like, I mean, that's actually, I was in a situation like that where I didn't even know what to call myself. But people just started calling me things and referring, and so it actually wasn't.
Good things. I mean, not bad things, right?
Oh yeah, no, not like bad names or curse words or anything like that. No, I mean,
That
like, I
guy
didn't have
Riley.
I didn't have a title. I didn't have like a job description. I just had like a list of things that I could perform or do, and I just kind of put it out there and saw what people were interested in. But I think what was happening, part of the reason that I had that success, yes, you have to have some skills. You have to be able to deliver the things that you promise. But I think other people were labeling me. Other people were giving me a title. Um, I think one of them was like a it was almost again, this is like behind closed doors, so I wasn't hearing it, but it was almost like a glorified personal assistant hybrid. Like, I could do it was like just a mix of things. They would make up their own names for it, and they're like, oh, that sounds great, I would love to have someone like that. And that got me hired. But it was the fact that I didn't really care what people called me, or I
Mm,
didn't have any identity attachment. It was this being okay and leaning into the what I talked about earlier, the heuristics of, like,
mm,
and heuristics meaning, in psychology, people, if you haven't heard this term before, maybe just Google it, might be faster, but it's we look for shortcuts. We want to be able to say, like, oh, that's like this. So
mm.
the cardiovascular system, how do I explain that? Oh, that's like traffic driving on highways, delivering goods from one place to another.
Cool.
Explained. Done. And
That
so
was that was quick thinking there,
how
Riley.
do
I love that.
you
Yeah.
how do you use so how do you explain that? And that's like scaffolding. There's all sorts of different terms and fields that explain this, but it's just, it almost doesn't matter as long as you just trust and just understand that if you just lean into that and allow yourself to give other people like a something to hang their hat on. Like, you need to have that structure for people to be able to, and that's where the narrowing your niche comes in, and actually picking, like, choosing your lane.
Yeah. Well, the other piece about this as well, though, as you were talking about it, and when it comes to picking a lane and narrowing the niche, something to overcome in the pursuit of this is because we work with some really talented people who can do really amazingly creative things. You know, you give them a brief
Very,
and
yeah.
they're resourceful, they'll draw on resources, like the stuff they've done in the past, they'll learn new things and it feels really creative. But when you pick a lane, the the idea that it stops you being creative is also completely like thrown out the window, because at
Yeah.
that point, that constraint really sharpens everything, your message, and then all the other stuff that you do. And something which I have increasingly been kind of thinking about, and how to think about this, is that whereas in the past you could be creative and do all these bespoke things and add all the bells and whistles for all these different clients that you have, what if you just treated yourself as that client, where you're going to put all of that creativity to grow your business, not somebody else's business? Because it's both the front end stuff, what you do with your clients, but also the back end systems and processes that you set up, where, for me at least, the creativity just turned, the dial turned up, which also meant that all my efforts compounded. And once you just pick that lane and marketing gets easier and on those referrals grow, all of that kind of wasted energy that you were talking about, swinging that dull axe, well, you don't even have to swing as hard. You'll just and you start to fell. Is that even the right conjugation of the word? Fell bigger trees, right? And to the point where I'm seeing increasingly that compounding effect since the my intentional pivot 2-3 years ago to go from primarily B2B to what we're doing right now, B2C stuff. It's the marketing that I've done over those years. I'm having people who were ex-colleagues, peers, who are just coming out of the woodwork, just tapping me up on, the metaphorical digital shoulder and saying, "Hey, Ped, I think I need your help. Should we have a virtual coffee and we can talk about where I'm at?" And that wouldn't have happened without picking a lane at all. Zero chance of that happening. So yeah, this is yeah, this it's a fun place to be.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor the point or geek out on this too much, but I think that's a big part of why I became or was hired to be a chief operating officer as well, is because I was then able to direct all of my attention, efforts, focus towards one business internally to build out the systems
Mm,
to just make everything else more efficient. And obviously, if you're a solopreneur, you might not have the budget or the bandwidth or the need, quite honestly, for
yeah,
an operations consultant or someone like that. But that's also why we have built lots of systems that you can just have. You don't need to have like this big engagement partnership. But also, it's I guess bringing it back to that analogy, it really is. It's like both sides of the equation. When you say like you don't have to swing as hard, if
mm,
if the axe is sharper, you it you will do if you swing just as hard, you will, yeah, like you said, fell bigger trees. You will be able to chop bigger wood. But it just means like on a real level, maybe you get more time back with your kids,
yeah.
or maybe you can start to heal some of the like burnout that you've experienced. Uh, or maybe you increase your income and make more money and grow your business and do more traveling or buy your dream house on the hill that looks over the ocean side, or whatever the thing is.
All of the above. I mean,
It's
they're also interlinked as well.
yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean is like it's and this is why our flagship, we talk about leverage, right? Leverage accelerator is because that's leverage. It's less effort for more ROI, and that does not mean by any means that you cannot avoid the work, or that you can avoid the work. It means you have to work. You still have to work hard, and we say this all the time. Like you have to go through first gear before you go to second and third and fourth and so on. Like if you're driving a stick shift car, you have to build up um, you have to build up the momentum. Just having a sharp axe doesn't immediately mean you just have momentum. Like you still have to put the effort in.
Yeah, you
It's
might
you
know
can't.
you might not have the skill to hit the tree at exactly the same spot. You've
Oh,
just got
right? Yeah, you're just chopping different parts of the tree.
hopping
Wow,
on
we can
different.
really stretch this analogy
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
with
yeah.
it.
You got all the twigs, all the,
Um,
like
yeah,
kindling.
so the effort can't go to zero, but it can definitely be drastically reduced. And I think for a lot of people, and myself included, like we've had those moments where you feel stuck and you're and yet you don't want to let go of there's that FOMO or that identity that you're attached to, and you're like, oh, I can do so many things. It's like, yeah, you can. But my belief, Ped, is that I deeply to the core believe that even if I would say for all capable, able-bodied, and minded individuals, let's put it that way, there's obvious limitations on different people for different reasons, and like not everyone's born 7 foot and they're gonna go play in the NBA. But I think for the most part, I believe that the average person is capable of almost anything. But that does not mean they're capable of everything. You might have a few things that you can do really well, better than most, but I'd bet you if you try to do all three things, that's like chopping three different parts of the tree at the same time. You're much better off picking one area and swinging that sharper axe and actually like giving yourself a chance to build that momentum and eventually buy back your time and whatever else you want to do with it from there.
Absolutely. Well, should we wrap up then, Riley? Like, what would you say is like one key takeaway for people to leave this podcast with?
It is chop enough wood for the no. It's I think it's really the there's this quote that always comes to mind that discipline equals freedom, and I think that's it's hopefully you are not walking away from this episode thinking that freedom means keeping all of your options open. And I think as you get more advanced, as you create more opportunities, eventually it requires discipline to make a decision, to choose and take ownership of those choices. And I think that is actually what gives you the most freedom.
Yeah, once you do that, everything then gets a lot lighter. Your marketing stops feeling like it's a constant guessing game because you know exactly who you're targeting, why they should care about the services that you can offer them, and your message ultimately lands for them. It works for you, not against you, and allows you to have all the stuff that Riley talked about, sitting on a beach, more time with your family, more income, and all those beautiful things because you have picked a lane. That's my takeaway from today.